So, Ken, what's up?
Well, I'm real honored to be talking to Eva Dilcue. Is that how you say?
Q.
Q?
Dilcue.
Dilcue.
I don't know. How do you say Euclid Avenue backwards?
Is that what it is? My goodness.
You didn't know
cool.
that?
No, I didn't know that.
People come up to me all the time. Do you know your name spelled backwards is Euclid Avenue? I said, no.
Who invented that name for you?
Interesting. When I was working at Cleveland State in the library, this is just before I met Mark and all that stuff happened. There was a guy that used to come in. I worked at the Art Slide Library on the 4th floor. And this guy used to come in, and he was very unusual. He would come in the stacks, right? He'd be looking at stuff, and when I would go to look to see where he was, he would be sitting there like this, kind of like playing cat and mouse. And one day on my desk, he left, and I went to my desk, and there was a pair of Superman footy socks. You know, the kind back in the 50s, it had the feet on them, and they were knitted, and it had Superman on here.
Yeah.
And he'd been the only person there. And then the other time I was there, he came in, he left me a little box of printed matches, you know, like a little case of matches that you buy, gold, green, and silver. And it said, Eva Dilcue on it. And I said, what is this? And he said, you are the spirit of Euclid Avenue. You're like the leather librarian or something like that. And his name is Andy Klimek. And he used to be in...
the Sirens of the Mirrors? Or,
no, the Backdoor Men.
Okay.
That's where I met him from. And
is he Jamie Klimek's brother? Or the guys that recorded the Velvets at the...
I have no idea. I didn't really know him.
So Andrew?
Andy Klimek.
Yeah.
Andy
K-L-I-M-E-C, right?
E-K.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I moved back here, interestingly enough, Donna and I were playing at the Barking Spider, and Andy Klimek shows up. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe it's you. Do you even remember me? He goes, yeah. So I said, well, you gave me my name. Thank you so much.
What year was that the library thing happened?
74, 75.
Okay. Wow.
76, maybe?
I have video of Andrew Klimek playing at Clevo's Visa in Mars in 1990 where everyone had to do a Paul McCartney song.
Oh, wow. He's got glasses.
Yeah,
Tall,
yeah,
skinny guy. Yeah.
Wow. So his brother,
Jamie
is who taped the Velvets at Le Cave, which also have been bought by the Lou Reed estate and all that.
Wow.
And obviously all bands that started from those people seeing him. He was the one in the Mirrors and the Electric Eels and the Styrenes.
Yes.
And you know, the other edge of the Rockets who thing. So
A tree, a different branch.
and it's funny how his brother is who gave you your name. I mean that's almost
I know.
that's almost like Le Cave, Euclid Avenue street cred to the max.
Well, I grew up right around University Circle, right up the hill. So we used to, right where Le Cave is, when I was a kid, my mom, we had our dentist was right on 105th, right near there. So we would take the bus down there. And so to sneak in, you know, when you're 16 to, you know, right down the street from where you used to go, you'd be like extra naughty. You know?
Damn, too bad you weren't letting me video. You're so animated and fun. Anyhow, so you went to Heights?
No, I went to Lutheran East.
Okay.
'Cause I lived in Cleveland, and I was supposed to have gone to John Adams, but at the time they were getting busing together, and they wanted to bus me down to John Hay, and my parents said no. That was in, you know, the race riots and everything, and so they got me into Lutheran East, which was right on Mayfield across from Severance Hall. Severance Center.
Yeah.
And so that's where I met, you know, everybody that I would know. I would never have met any of the people. I can't imagine that my life would have taken this turn if I wouldn't have gone to Lutheran East, because that, put me in touch with people from Heights, and so it was pretty cool.
So tell me about your musical genesis. What music grabbed you first? What turned
Beatles.
you? Yeah.
The Beatles, absolutely the Beatles.
Just the Ed Sullivan like everyone else, or?
Oh no, listening to the radio, my little Bakelite radio, and listen to Wixie 1260.
The Top Hat and everything.
Yeah, and I love the Beatles. I had a Beatle haircut in the 6th grade. I had little Beatle boots. I still have a George Harrison doll.
So you were a George girl?
Oh, I love George. Yeah. And then from the Beatles, the Animals. They were so not the Beatles, but I mean, they still had that sound, But what I liked about the Beatles most was their more bluesy influence. After the initial, that sound, the Mercy sound. I really like their more blues-oriented songs. They had a little more depth to them,
A little more swing.
Yeah, and so I love the Animals. And then,
And what was it? Because they were
I love their
bad
music.
instead of
No,
sweet?
I love their music.
Yeah.
Their music. I mean, they
harder edge for sure.
Well, yeah, they were doing black music.
Yeah.
And making it into a popular sound. Even though a lot of it was very close, the instrumentation was a lot different because they had, the guy in the Rhodes piano and stuff.
Chaz Chandler.
Yeah.
Who did Chaz Chandler unleash to the world?
I don't know.
This unknown guitarist named Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, was that him?
Yeah, he saw him playing as Jimmy James and the Blue Flames at Cafe Wah in New York City when the Animals played there, and signed him a management contract, brought him back to London, and got him signed to the Who's Track Records, and became Jimi Hendrix. And you know what? Everyone thinks of Eric Burdon. I mean, beyond their hits, that might be the biggest historical contribution those guys made.
No kidding. Wow. So yeah, I, the Animals and stuff, and then, of course, Todd. I love Todd from the Nazz. Open My Eyes. It really.
Now, were the Nazz played on the radio much, or
Open
was
My Eyes.
Open My Eyes was actually a charting song?
Yeah. And then after that, I think the next big thing was Led Zeppelin. I was listening to Billy Bass one night. His shows were like 6 or whatever, and he said, "I'm going to play something you've never heard before," something like that, right? And he played, Good Times, Bad Times. He gets to it was just so different. The sound, their sound from, there was the Beatles, Mercy, the English sound.
Mm-hmm.
Then when they came out, there was this whole different, it was so heavy. It was heavy, but I just was blind. I wasn't the only one, because it get to the end and Billy Bass goes, "I'm going to play it again."
Wow.
He played it 3 times in a row.
Wow.
Yeah. So I just was like, okay, that's it. I think I went to Kmart and a couple weeks later and picked up, for 99 cents.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how little records did cost back then, and how important they were. I'm sure like you'd buy a record and you'd consume it visually before you did.
You just hold it.
Read it.
Yeah, it was something.
Music meant so much back then. It really, to me, was the medium of youthful and, let's say, counterculture, subculture.
What was the only thing? It didn't you didn't have social media, so if you wanted to meet people, you went to a club, right? If you wanted to learn information, you couldn't just click and Google whatever information you're looking for, right? So you had to seek out others that had that same kind of information. Where did they hang out? Record stores, right? So it was just a different culture because it was a different time. I was thinking about that driving out here too. It's so beautiful, and I'm really simple. I love light and shade, and up and down,
Yeah.
valleys and mountains, and and I think it's just as humans, we're evolving away from that,
Everything's flatlined.
and while we're moving away from the natural world into a different world, a different natural world. It will be, in 100 years from now, what we know of as now will be as old-fashioned as looking at that picture of your family, and we'll go, oh my God, we were so, backward, or, but it's not. At the time, we are the height. We are the peak of our civilization right now. This second, now, right now, and now, right now, right? And we just are keeping on being on top of everything that's come before us,
But much like I was talking about my kids not playing in the ravine.
Yeah.
To me, people our age were raised in much the same way intellectually and structurally as our great-grandparents.
Yeah.
The textbooks really didn't change all that much.
And now we're totally beyond that.
Yeah, the kids don't look at textbooks, and the first version of the answer that they find becomes the truth all too often, and we've reduced first-hand experience so much because people don't do things, and they live digital, and it's fake, and it's almost like Devo was right. The evolution is what's going on here.
Well, I went to almost every concert that came through Cleveland, right? And that was what you did for fun. But it wasn't necessarily fun standing in, like when it's first come, first serve, and you're standing there 5 hours trying to get into public hall, and they open the door and you're crushed to get,
Yeah.
and then you have to run like crazy to get to the front to get the best spot. It's very stressful. And then you're just sitting there like, oh boy, this is great. And then, it was different. But if there would have been a concert that I could have just watched on YouTube back then, I would rather have probably done that with like the millions of different camera angles and everything than just trying to sit there and, sit on somebody's shoulders because I'm short. I can't see anything, So I have to say in some aspects, I love digital. I love what it has done for convenience.
Yes.
But I think our generation has got the stuff to go under the digital,
Yes.
The things that are propping it up, the originals, the analog stuff, art and music, and
it makes you think if it ever, let's just imagine this coronavirus takes it down and things fail, and all of a sudden these big servers that have all the digital information, and the libraries have gotten rid of their books.
Yeah.
And
card catalogs?
Oh my goodness, Dewey Decimal System? Sorry, Library of Congress, buddy.
Yeah.
And even that, I worked in libraries as a kid, and it was Dewey Decimal, and then
then it switched to library.
LOC,
Yeah.
But it's certainly different. It's fascinating looking at how things are different. And my kids' strengths are the new digital era generation. They have skill sets that we never even thought about.
Well, look at our parents.
Oh yeah.
With our skills, just buying records, or tapes.
Yeah.
It's just a different world. I don't necessarily, culture-wise, I don't miss that because I a struggling person my whole life, and don't have a lot of money, and so everything that I wanted to do, I kind of had to piece together myself, So I kind of enjoy the ease that digital gives you, but
And the access to almost anything you
at
want.
any time, right?
Yeah.
But there's something wrong with that too. It used to be you only had turkey and cranberry dressing and all the stuff on Thanksgiving, right? And when I lived with my friend Jimmy and Paulette in Los Angeles, why do we have to wait for Thanksgiving? So I don't know, maybe like, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a year she would do a big turkey and we'd have the whole thing, and it just wasn't as special anymore. You know, I mean, it was great, but you look back on it and you go, I can have this anytime I want. There's nothing to look forward to.
Simpler sometimes is so much better.
Yeah.
And you're right, keeping things special or being able to get your answers without a lot of trial or tribulation, and you know, life experience teaches you a lot more than reading the same lesson in a book. And you may not really quite get it when you read it, but when life whaps you upside the head, you get it. You know. Yeah. Tell me about your first concert. What was your first show? What made you go to your first show?
The Beatles.
So which one?
The
public?
second one.
At the stadium.
At the stadium, yeah. Because I was too young to go to the first one. I was 12. And my best friend lived next door, was 13. And she liked Elvis and Gene Pitney and was not into the new music. And that's when we started to kind of split ways. But because she was a year older, my mother trusted her to be my chaperone. So a 13-year-old and a 12-year-old went to the stadium on their own to see the Beatles. And it was amazing. I couldn't hear anything. I mean, it just, there was a snow fence about halfway down the field. You know, we were sitting in the stands. And as soon as they started announcing, everybody just started screaming, and they rushed the field and knocked the snow fence down and just ran, just screamed. It was horrible, and it was fabulous. You know, I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see the Beatles. I couldn't hear them because it was just. In fact, at one point, the crowd was so crushed, my feet weren't even on the ground.
Oh goodness!
Just by being crushed. And I had one of Gail's. She had like a sweatshirt or something on. So I remember I had this so that we wouldn't get separated because it was. I mean, how many thousands of people were there?
I think that's 48.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was the first time in my life I'd ever been in a crowd or anything like that, you know. But it was the Beatles. You were there. I mean, I get it. You know, I'm old now, but I understand young people when they want to be part of something, right? You want to be part of it, whether you see it or not. You just want to experience. It's all energy, right? You just want to feel that energy. So,
where were you seeing most of your shows after that? What attracted you? Where did you hang out? What made you hang out there?
Hang out where?
Anywhere. You know, like Le Cave you were sneaking into. But...
Oh, I didn't hang out anywhere, you know. Well, Coventry.
Okay.
You know, I would tell my folks that I had to go to Drug World, which was right up the street for me, to get a pen or something, right? And Coventry was only about 10 minutes away. And I would just go down to Coventry, you know, bum a cigarette. We'd stand on the corner and just, you know.
What year are you talking?
1970.
What was there then? I mean, was Bill Jones' Letter there? Or
yeah.
Arabica?
Irv's, no, Arabica wasn't there.
Irv's, obviously.
The Elephant's Trunk, Sartorium. There were all these, all these 60s, end of the 60s psychedelic stuff. I think Record Rev was there.
Yeah.
And we just hang, you know, and probably looking for, you know, weed, you know. And yeah.
Yeah, I'd always heard when I started going to Coventry, my cousin who had been a junkie and messed around with, you know, my parents, don't you go to Coventry because that's where all the heroin is. And don't want you going to that Herb's Deli. And it was at the hub of the scene.
Yeah.
You know, Coventry for me, it's funny because when Jane Scott would give me those records and I'd go trade them in, you know, my parents didn't know where I was going on Saturday. I'd take my paper out money and go down to Record Exchange when it was across the street.
Yeah.
And old ladies would think I worked there and they'd ask me questions and I'd answer the questions. One of the Shahinian brothers said, hey, why don't you just work here on Saturday and you won't have to pay as much for your records. So I started working down there, and how my parents found out was my dad goes, oh, come on, we're going to the West Side Market. And I was like, I got to work. And And I think about being 12 years old and having these freaks at Coventry, you know, being my mentors, you know,
Yeah.
and all these older people, and it was all about the music and the scene, and that place really was the hub. And it's where I chose to live when I got out of college.
Yeah.
And then it seemed to get clamped down in the 80s. They were like, oh, we can't have this, even though it's the most vibrant feeling part of the East Side, at least, you know. Yeah. What are your best Coventry memories or haunts, or what do you miss about those days?
Well, in the 80s or?
Yeah, both. 70s, 80s, when Coventry was happening. Because that's something that no one's touched on. That really was.
It was a hub.
Social hub.
Yeah, and it was because of the music and you know, the clothes stores that were there. You know, the record stores and stuff. I mean, that was where you went to buy your hippie clothes. You know, Sartorium and Elephant's Trunk, and there's another one I can't remember. But yeah, and that's where everybody hung out.
Was it cross-cultural, or was it?
Oh yeah, all kinds of people were there.
Yeah,
you know.
My impression.
Yeah, it was. It kind of reminded me of an English pub. You've got all ages coming together, you know, which was unusual for here, because usually you go to a bar and it's all your peers. You know, you don't go to a bar where there's a bunch of old guys sitting in the corner, you know,
playing chess.
Yeah, darts. You know, working at Record Rev, that was pretty sweet. That was.
What years were you working there?
It was after the Generators, after we broke up. So it was like 80, maybe 84, 85, because I worked at Cleveland State for a little bit before I went to Record Rev. It was great. I mean, you know, Ital used to come, you know.
Well, yeah, the guys from Ital were working in there, weren't they? And what's his name from the drummer from Perubu?
Oh, Rod Reisman?
No.
Well, he worked there.
Oh, what's his name?
See, we're all.
Shoot. Gosh darn it.
Don't think about it; it'll come to you.
I know. Yeah, that was such a musical hub.
Well, and then, you know, let's not ignore the elephant in the room: drugs.
Yes.
You know, there was just all kinds of drugs everywhere, especially in the 80s. You know, I mean, you wanted anything, you went to Coventry. You know, or knew somebody who knew somebody. You know, and yeah, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Yeah. You know, there were a lot of good things about it. There was a lot of excess, and there was nobody to really tell you that it was wrong. You know, or not wrong, even just, you know, oh well, that's what happens. You know, somebody bites the dust. You go, oh well, they should have known better. So it's like a love-hate relationship. You know. There's certain things you like about it, but then, you know, when I think back, I try to be honest with myself, and it's like, there's some pretty awful things too. So, you know, I'm trying to stay positive.
All right, so you know, obviously the Generators have been your biggest musical endeavor you were involved in, and certainly had a lot of people's attention in the early 80s. I mean, it was hard to avoid the buzz of the Generators, and
well, just the buzz of Cleveland, Northeast Ohio. I mean, like we were just talking before, you know, the Wild Giraffes, the Adults, Hammer Damage, you know, just all these people, Wild Giraffes, you know, I'm just blown away at how many good musicians, you know, good music came out of here. It was such a like a petri dish.
Yeah. Hopefully not of germs. And if there one's good viruses. For the world.
Good germs. Yeah. Wasn't there even a group called the Germs?
Yeah. Pat, the guy that ended up playing guitar in Nirvana, Pat Smear.
Yeah.
So tell me, what was the nucleus of the generators? How did it all get going? What made it happen?
Well, I met Mark at a folk club on the west side, and we kind of hit it off. And either he knew Don or Glenn, and they knew somebody that Buzzy was looking for a backup band. And so we got together as the Buzzards to be his backup band. So we learned, just a bunch of cover songs and stuff. So we would play first, and then Buzzy would come out. We warm up. Buzzy would come out, and then we would play his songs. And we traveled in a van, to Stanhope, New Jersey, and we played on Long Island at a Club Mimi, and it was a big psychedelic painted, like a rainbow painted barn at the end of the road, and the road just petered off into the water. And people were out there with lobster traps and stuff. Cool. And it was just a huge barn. Both the doors were open. And the next night that we were supposed to play, it was raining, and it was just water pooling up all over the place. I think we played. We stayed in people's houses that Buzzy knew, So people were very kind to put us up. One place had. It was kind of like this, out like this, and there was no water or toilets in the place we were staying, so we had to go into the house. And in the middle of the night, you got to go to the bathroom, and it's like, look at the go in and use the bathroom. It was uncomfortable, and it was cool at the same time. So you're.
Buzzy, at that point, it wasn't still on a label. I mean, that was probably about a decade after you.
I don't know. He had, while we were playing with him, he had his own thing, and after we finished playing, he went and did his thing, and then we kind of all hung out together. But I mean, we didn't hang out with him.
Yeah.
A couple of people knew him better than I did. He didn't really seem to be much interested in, conversing or anything. So that was a strange experience. But because of that, we became the Heaters after that. Okay. And then we got a letter from, I guess, a band in Los Angeles that was already, had a label, and they were already called the Heaters, and they told us to cease and desist. So that's when we came up with the Generators, kind of like a heater, in the same vein. So that's how that happened. And something like that, I mean, the details. Jimmy is the guy. He's got the mind like a steel trap. He can remember everything. I called him up. I remember one time, I was trying to think. Somebody did a remake in the '80s of Nothing Can Change the Shape of Things to Come. It was a punk, and I couldn't remember it for the life of me. And I couldn't remember the name of the song. And I called him in California. I said, Jimmy, you remember that song? How did it go? I don't know. What's the name? I don't know. And he just goes, The Seclusions. Yes, it was it. He's just like, we're kind of on the same way. He can read my dead brain cells.
Right. Make the synapses fire, whether it's in your head or not.
That's a great song too. But so yeah, what was the question?
Tell me about how the Generators got going. So after the Heaters had to cease and desist and became the Generators.
Yeah.
I mean, you ended up playing the bigger clubs around town.
No, the first year, we begged people to give us suggestions. We started on Tuesday nights because Tuesday nights were dead everywhere. Yeah. So we would play Tuesday nights at the Flip Side, or the Pop Shop, or the Mistake. I can't remember which was it called first.
I think it was called the steak first and then the
Yeah,
pork chop.
so we would get those places on the off nights. And I remember going around with Stutz during the day to bars with a tape. And, you know, he's just such a showman. He can walk into a bar in the middle of the day. Hey, fella, hey, what are you doing? Hey, you know, you just chat him up, and then he'd say, who do I see about, we'll get the tape out or whatever. And he, got us in.
So he had the gusto in the group.
They all had gusto, but he had the chutzpah.
Yeah,
The chutzpah to walk in and say, plus he's a big guy, and is more. If I walked in like, you don't want to listen to a tape, do you? He's like, hey, listen to this. We're really good.
Now we'd have to walk in there and click on my electronic press kit, darn it.
You just walk in with your laptop and say, here we are, But yeah, so we started playing those dates, and then, we have to negotiate. They say, well, we got, right? So first we were just playing for the door, and then, you get a guarantee versus the door, and then we started getting better dates, a Thursday night, and Friday nights. Then I think my favorite spot was Duke Tavern.
Me too.
Because it was just such a great space.
With the stage where it belonged, it was a wonderful space back then.
I always thought it should be at the short end like it is now, so that the sound could have a chance to, especially bass waves, they take a long, right?
Yeah.
But where it is now sucks.
Because the bar doesn't work that way.
No, it's like a whole different thing.
Right.
Yeah.
The only night I enjoyed there was Stress's Memorial.
Memorial,
and
yeah.
That was because it was that.
Yeah.
But musically, it never ever worked.
No.
But living up the hill, I'd be there 3, 4, 5 times a week for all the bands over and over and over.
Well, that's the thing. We all played there. And, you look at any of those flyers on, Monday night you got this, on Tuesday night you got that, on Wednesday night like this, and sometimes on Friday and Saturday, you'd have maybe Numbers Band on there for 2 days.
Yeah.
A couple times we were there it was great. That was like, we didn't have to take anything down, it was fun. Schlepping your own stuff, even though we had roadies, you still schlep.
So how far did you guys travel? How far?
Mostly we just played in Cleveland. A couple times we played on the west side. It was like another country. We played a couple places in Strongsville. And they had no idea who we were. We had already, have a name now for ourselves in Cleveland, and we want to break out and do some other places. And, you're doing your best. You go, what is wrong with these people? They're just sitting there like, free bird! Stuff, So we played, where did we go? Oh, we had a date at the Bottom Line.
Okay.
And saw Long John Baldry. He played there the night before we did. That was amazing. That was pretty amazing. It was an experience. That was quite an experience. But I'd have to say that's probably about as far as...
Really?
We didn't really travel. You give me my ball. Right.
I had always thought the generators had nibbles by labels and...
That's why we went to the Bottom Line. We were supposed to... There were supposed to be record company people there. There was a write-up that, our management had given us the last of like the great sort of where you would rent it out and have free bar, open bar and stuff, and they had all the tables with the little reserve spots on it, and it was just a fiasco. So let's just leave it at that. Yeah.
Who were the generators managers?
Let's just leave it.
All right. I'll leave that.
Yeah. Okay. And a cautionary tale.
What was your favorite Generators moment?
I have to say when we played one of the coffee break concerts. When we played an appreciation or something, and there was Donnie Iris and Michael Stanley. There's a bunch of and we played, in that, and that was pretty exciting. I have to say one of the coffee break, I think maybe it was in '82. That was a really good concert. We were all in the zone, and it was good. And every night was a good night. Some nights were good than others, But you're doing, I'd be crazy if I didn't tell you that, it's a job that you love, right? You're making music and you're getting paid for it. Maybe not much, but, you're doing what you love to do, and how many people can do that? So
not enough, and hopefully everybody.
Yeah. For a little schmuck like me, wow, it was just amazing, and it just all kind of happened, We kind of all came together, kind of haphazardly, and kind of haphazardly stuck together, like a loose chemical compound that's going to lose some electrons here and there,
Still have it. Most of it's original.
Most of it, yeah. There was an energy. That's I've always thought and felt that. Music, everything is energy, right? Everything in life is energy, but especially music, because you can feel those sound waves beating against your body, right? And when everybody's dancing and the energy is up, and it's just like a vortex, right? So you just, it was great,
And beyond the music and the simple energy reaction to the sound, then you have the words to make your head hopefully
explode
as well, yeah. And when you get both of those things happening at the same time, revelation or understanding or just
a healthy dose of Coke in there too. Yeah. But yeah, the energy was just amazing. And when you go to a concert and you're blown away, you imagine you're the person up there and you're making that energy. And I saw John McLaughlin, I saw Mahavishnu Orchestra at Case, and Aerosmith was supposed to open.
A lot of weird pairing.
Wasn't that weird? They didn't show up, and we're sitting there waiting. We're all sitting on the ground. Sitting on the floor. It was a small stage, and so the guy comes out and says Aerosmith is canceled because something happened, and everybody, I goes, don't worry, Mahavishnu are going to play longer, and everybody's like, yay. So they came out, and everybody was they just were so fabulous, and everybody's talking and clapping and everything, and he stops, and he says, this is an exchange. It's an energy exchange. We feed off of you, you feed off of us. Words to that, Yeah. And everybody just shut up. And you could hear a pin drop, and they played, I don't know, almost 4 hours.
Goodness.
Yeah. And it was a mystical experience, It's just, they were just so good. That's, you asked me who's my favorite
musical experience.
Mm-hmm. In the later 70s, the jazz rock fusion, I really liked some of it. Some of it was real, but John McLaughlin, and Return to Forever. Yeah.
Yeah, I grabbed that promo poster, Romantic Warrior, because the cover was just so cool for like a 12, 13-year-old kid. I never had listened to the record, but I loved the poster. And
who's Romantic?
Oh, that was Return to Forever, the one that had like a knight on the
cover. Yeah.
But it was like, as a kid, morphing from G.I. Joes into music, it drew me in. And
we forget how important images and movie posters and
And again, the kids get music from downloading. All they get is the song. You know.
Well, and it's commoditized, and it's all the same.
Yeah, it's not about the cover or it's a package. You know, 'cause I might see the same download icon and you might see a little thumbnail, but it was so much more important to us than the words.
Yeah.
You know, just
Well, because you don't need to. You don't need. If you want to read, if you want to read about them, you just Google it, and there you are, and you've got every picture that they've ever had of them. So you don't need an album or a program book from and you just flip their longing through the years, looking at the pictures. You just hit a button, and there it is. I think that's pretty cool.
It is really cool. But it's also different.
Well, yeah, but different isn't necessarily bad.
I don't think it's bad too, because I think if people get
you wouldn't be able to do this.
That's right. Well, in the old days, I rubbed together 2 sticks and the patterns in the wood that were representative of the speech. You only get like 8 words an hour, but even that, I think about my first digital decks were 8-bit. And,
oh yeah.
And now people would scoff and go, "Oh my God, 8-bit, that's so horrible." But the evolution of the whole technological side of the music.
They have phones, and like stick music. You got your stuffies on a stick, right? And they look like old-fashioned phones. They look like old-fashioned, Walkmans or whatever. So it's not the same.
No. But you get to it, and life's living, and however you consume your art or your dope or your food, and it's your choices of what you're doing and what makes you happy or keeps you going or whatever that may be. And
well, there's 2. You're talking about the 2 trees. There's 2 trees. There's pop culture, and then there's life. I'm sure there's many true branches, but what we're talking about, and we grew, the 60s were the beginning of pop culture. It didn't exist really. Elvis and those guys, that people were just starting to realize the power of the youth. Yeah, and youth. Right?
Yeah. Well, it was because you finally had a majority population of kids.
The boomers.
Yep. Whoops.
So I think, we're I love my generation, but it's had its time, and now we're moving on, and new generations are coming up.
So one of the real marks of your youth culture or your time coming up, was Kent State.
Yeah.
Tell me what you remember about Kent State and what led to it, and the mood of kids and culture were then.
Well, from TV, all we had that was how we got your news. Just television, 3 channels. And the news all the time was about the Vietnam War. That was it. That was all you heard about. And I remember one of the first bands I was in. Our first paying gig was one of the guys' brothers was a fraternity at Case, and they were having a lottery party. So they were going to read everybody, kids, if you're 18, you got a lottery number, and they read the numbers off, and if your number got called, you were going to Vietnam. It didn't happen a lot, but so that was the Silver Prism was the name of that band.
Silver Prism.
The Silver Prism. We only played. I think we.
Anyone in there that?
Who do I remember? Bill Kerr's band was one, and oh God, what was his name? Dickie. I can't remember. I'm sorry, it was a long time ago. But yeah, so we played a lottery party, and it was great. You know, our pay was a keg. You know, so for high school kids, I was like, ooh. But that was it was sad because there was nothing you could do other than protest. You know, didn't have all these watch groups and, you know, transparency and all. I mean, it is like today, except that now we don't even lie. You just say no, you know, this is what it is. I mean, everything is a lie now, right? So, but we trusted people back then, and so this was the first inclination, the first big, I think, inclination that something isn't right in the government. You know, something isn't right. That this, you know. So you start finding out all the. We're forced to learn about world history, modern world history, whether you liked it or not. You know, so.
It was the first canon of mistrust in the.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say the first, because I mean there were war protests, but the first big one that things.
Yeah. Well, and then here they were, you know, it was going to be a party, you know, there was going to be bands and, you know, music, and it was like a festival and a protest. And then, you know, 4 people get just shot dead. So, they're shooting us. They shot their children. You know what I mean? They shot us. Our own people shot us. And you hear about that kind of stuff in banana republics and everything, and you think, no, this can't happen here. And it just kind of went downhill from then, like Altamont, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's looked at as the end of the hippies and
Yep.
the optimism of the Aquarian generation.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Things change, you know. I'm proud to say I was a hippie and a punk. You know?
What got you off of hippie and into punk? Talk about that transition, or was there none? Was it just the same with a different set of clothing and makeup?
Pretty much. I mean, I didn't think about it other than, you know. Well, when we first started Plays of Buzzards, I still had, you know, hippie stuff. So I had long hair and, you know, romantic clothes, you know, floofy flowing things, and then I look around the other bands that are playing, and it's like, wow, I like that. Short hair that isn't shiny, you know, clothes that don't get in your way. You know what I mean? Just
efficient clothing rather than efficient
yes.
clothing rather than fluffy, look at me.
Skeevy Nicks.
Yeah. So in this book that I showed you earlier, one of the...
From the Velvets to the Voidoids by Clinton Halen.
Yeah. You know, Clinton's supposition is that punk was born in a few places, not just London and New York, but Cleveland, and, you know, he says that the economic situation where Cleveland had basically lost half its population from 1950 to 75, and the industry, you know, fleeing the country, if not just the, you know, the region to go down south, you know, economic ruin, and had been the, you know, one of the crown jewels of the Industrial Revolution. And, you know, I'd love to hear your perspective of watching Cleveland rot from when you were a little kid to the point of, you know.
Well, you know what? Just how the Beatles changed everything. The Beatles changed the style of music, the sound of the music, and then I say Led Zeppelin was like the next change, like the next evolution in rock, you know, taking it to that heavier level. And then the next exciting sound was punk, you know, the Clash, and what was the first?
Well, sort of the Sex Pistols get credit, but the Clash, I think, actually kind of.
Well, I mean, even smaller, like the college radio. Oh, that college radio is what it's all about. You know, that was the other thing. You know, that was where you heard new music. Yeah. What was the first? I think Devo, because it was just so different. That was later. That was a little bit later. But I mean, they were, as an example, I mean, just such a different sound. And when you're hungry for new sounds, right?
You hunt.
You hunt. Yeah, when there are record stores to hunt through and talk to people, you know.
So what punk music grabbed you first?
That's what I'm trying
hit
to
your head?
remember. That's what I'm trying to remember. They were it was kind of obscure. I think. Well, the Backdoor Men with Andy Klimek. They played at Fat Glenn's. And I was working at Cleveland State, like I said, in the Art Slide Library. And went down after work. And this music, it was just so different. It was just, again, it was just different sounding. It was raw, and it was melodic. These guys were melodic, but there was that talky aspect. You know, people didn't sing and hold no tone. You know, they just, you know, and it was really exciting. I can't tell you why. You know, I'm not a psychologist, but that kind of sound, and then the real clipped guitar, and yeah. It was just it kind of ratchet. It was like ratchet music, you know. It just kept. You can't relax.
Yeah.
Right?
Good coke music.
Yeah, well, and the whole time period too. You know, it was just, everything was escalating. You know, here we are now. You know?
So when the Generators were kicking, you know, the story goes that filmmaker Paul Schrader got exposed to the band and the Euclid Tavern scene, and it led to not only creation of his movie Light of Day, but, you know, talks about one of rock's superstars, you know, at best expanding upon one of your ideas, and born in the USA.
Well, that's real interesting, because we won this record contest. WMMS had a, you know, I can't even remember what the name of it was, but we submitted a song or two and we won, and you got to have a 45 pressed, and that was Summertime? No. God, I'm so old. I can't even remember what. But anyway, that was our first record. And the management that we had at the time knew Paul Schrader, and he was looking for a band basically that doesn't make it. So he wasn't looking for a Cleveland band, you know, like Donnie Iris or something that had already. He was looking to follow just a working class band, and that's pretty much what we were. It could have been any band in Cleveland, but we won this thing, and that's how
the connection.
That's how the connection happened. So he came and hung out with us for about a week, and he rented out the theater in Little Italy on Mayfield Road there.
Oh yeah, the movie theater.
Yeah.
What was that called? Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And because he had asked us, did we know, had we seen any of his movies? And somebody had seen, I think, Raging Bull. Somebody else had seen a different one. So he had his people in Los Angeles send out, I don't know, 3 or 4 of his movies. American Gigolo. The one about Detroit. I think it had Richard Pryor and Michael Keaton in it.
Oh, yeah, Blue Collar.
Blue Collar, American Gigolo, Raging Bull. So he rented out the theater and had us and our friends. And we really, so he hung out with us and he helped carry equipment and stuff. And he was mostly talking to Stutz and Mark. And didn't pay much attention to me. And one of the last days he was there, I think the second to the last day, I used to play Space Invaders at Euclid Tavern, and I was there clicking them. That was pretty good. And somebody puts a quarter on the thing, and I turn it to Tim. And he said, "Well, you're pretty good." I said, "Well, come on, let's go." And so we played a couple of games of Space Invaders, and we kind of were talking. That was the first time he talked to me. And So it was interesting. He had a different. So he told us about the movie. You know, he was wanted to be kind of like an autobiographical movie about he and his brother in the band that his brother was in, I guess. And he said, but he couldn't make it right away because he was already under contract to do this other movie. And I said, oh, what is that? And with Cat People and Mishima. He had these two movies he had. And I was like, he goes, you probably wouldn't know. And I said, what? He goes, well, it's about life of Yukio Mishima. I said, oh, he's one of my favorite authors. And he like, eh. So the last 2 days we talked.
Yeah.
But it was mostly just like this. We're just talking about, you know, you getting to know somebody. And so he said, you know, I'm looking for a song for this movie that I want to write, you know. And I want it to be, you know, Born in the USA. So he wrote that song, and we sent it to him, and he said, thanks a lot, but no thanks. Because, I mean, you know, he had Bruce Springsteen.
Right.
So, Bruce Springsteen and a generator. I don't know. What would you pick, you know? So I guess it probably was more of a reflection of the type of music he was looking for, you know. Well, I'm just glad we got a good song out of it, you know.
What's your proudest generator moment?
Like
what sticks out is this is the best thing that happened to us, or thing I'm proudest of, or
personally?
Because I asked you.
No, I mean, do you want my personal, what I find for me, or for the band as a
No.
whole?
Speak as you.
I'd say learning to write songs. You know, I lived with Mark for about a year, and he's a great songwriter. And so I would, you know, see his process. He's got a different process than I do, but, you know, being around somebody who's writing and doing stuff, you know, God, I have something I want to say.
How'd you fulfill your artistic buzz, or where'd your life lead you after the end of the band?
Well, I worked at Cleveland State for a little while, you know, at the in the library. Oh, I was interlibrary loan at that point. Yeah, so that, you know, telex was the big hot thing. You know, here, ooh, we got something coming through.
I forgot about
that. Yeah. So we had our little mainframe computer. You know, our computers stuck into the interlibrary, you know, Library of Congress database or whatever, and somebody is looking for a book, and so we would actually you had to actually find the book and then have them send the book to the person you were looking, you know, who was looking for. So, I mean, just as an example, digital is so cool for that, because you don't even need an actual book. You don't have to actually send the book. You know, you could just download it or whatever. You know, so it's just a whole different thing. So I learned a lot of skills that are just so redundant now. You know, I mean, who cares? And then I worked at Record Rev for a while. I got hired. Peter hired me, and then I think like 2 days later he died. So I worked at Record Rev right after Jana became the manager, you know.
Right.
And it was weird because, you know, it was such a pall over everything, and I didn't know him at all. And but it was a great place to work. The people that worked there were great. You know, what a wonderful music store, and met a lot of wonderful people. You know, and then I moved. Jimmy, the drummer from the Generators, moved to Los Angeles, and he and I were sending music back and forth through the mail on a 4-track cassette. And so I moved out to Los Angeles to make music with Jimmy, and we recorded we had 2 things. We had the Bungee Jumpers A to Z, and we have another one in the can called Antiquities. It never got put out because our funding got pulled at the last minute. So, so we have the master tape for that. I think Jimmy and I are gonna put that out. The Antiquities, we're gonna put that out in maybe this year or next year.
Cool.
Because we did it, and that's not gonna do anybody any good. It's just gonna be wasted, right? So we're gonna put that out, and then we moved to San Francisco, and Jimmy and I played the acoustic music circuit there, which was great just before Silicon Valley thing. He's played Hotel Utah and Hotel Pickwick.
Scott Krause.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes. See?
You know what made my synapse work?
So yeah, so after our funding got pulled, and we recorded that in Fontana, which is
Montana.
Fontana.
Oh, Fontana.
Yeah, it's outside Los Angeles. So we'd record there on the weekends, and stay in this little trailer behind the guy's recording studio. And that was fun. That was a good experience. And again, it was right when MIDI. Remember MIDI?
Yeah, MIDI. Yeah.
Yes. So we recorded stuff live, but then we had a lot of MIDI stuff. So I remember one song we had a sound. He plucked one note of a sitar, and then put it through MIDI so we could play it. It was like that. And so let's see what happened after that. So when the funding got pulled and we kind of got the air knocked out of us,